Hey, and we're back with another episode of Before You Buy, that show where we give you some straight up gameplay and our first impressions of the latest games releasing. As usual, it's me, Jake, and today we're talking about Monster Hunter Wilds. This feels like the culmination of the new generation of Monster Hunter, really. It started with World, kind of was evolved with Rise, and now Wilds takes it all a few steps further in this big jam-packed game. So far, it seems great, with a couple of caveats. What you expect from Monster Hunter, but, with some great creative additions, as well as some tweaks that hardcore fans might not like. We'll talk about that. Otherwise, I've been having a damn fun time here. Let's get into it. But first, of course, just so you know, I've been playing a review copy, and this footage was captured running on a PS5 Pro, and the footage and my impressions here are spoiler-free. Now, I say that because this Monster Hunter has a lot of story up front. You're a monster hunter here with like a big band of explorers checking out a new region when you stumble upon a child missing from their mysterious home. Of course, the big monsters that roam the land are acting weird, so it's up to you guys to explore, learn, and get to the bottom of things. Monster Hunter games have some story, yeah, but this one is pretty consistently paced and strings you along on this tale. At times, it gets a little bit too long-winded, but thankfully, it's got some quirky characters, some cool revelations, and essentially serves as a good way to introduce people to the complexities of Monster Hunter, sort of. A game where, of course, you kill 6 dinosaurs to make a new pair of pants out of them is actually more complicated than you'd expect. And this time, more than ever, it feels like the creators are aware that Monster Hunter is a lot, and they're willing to hold your hand quite a bit more because of that. We'll get back to that in a bit. And of course, with Monster Hunter, the game is absolutely not over when you finish the story or campaign or whatever you want to call it. So how are the fundamentals here? Like, we can talk about the foundations, and they're very good. Monster Hunter is still fun as hell, man. It's always been like a bit of a dense game, but once you crack into it and feel that thrill of slam dunking a big monster as it charges towards you, that power fantasy, and then you get hooked on that addictive loot loop. Monster Hunter is a very, very unique series, and at the very least, this continues that for me, at least as a casual fan. This is one that feels familiar at first, but quickly shows more of its different cards. The first thing is this seamless open world. This is a first for the series. Areas were typically separated by zones, loading screens, areas you'd essentially load into to go on a hunt, that sort of thing. Now, it's just a big-ass world you can run around, and you can hunt some monsters, go back to camp whenever you want. Was the switch to full open world absolutely necessary? No, but it's still very nice to have. This sounds like potentially a big change to the game's structure and formula if you know it, yeah, but it actually manages to feel distinctly Monster Hunter still, despite the change-ups. Victories still feel big and worth savoring, and there's still plenty of management and strategy. Now, not only at a town or a village, but also camps you can set up and then customize in the world. Here, you can plot your next course, you can craft, you can tweak your inventory, stuff like that. There's a lot of customization like this. Not only this camp-like thing down to the design of the tent, but also a really good character creator, of course, your Palico as well, and fully customizing your Sacred. This is essentially a raptor bird that serves as your mount for the game. Navigating the larger world with this is cool. It runs fast, it has cool kind of raptor-like animations, it can glide, it can navigate trickier shortcuts and sections that you can't use on foot. It's also just a really powerful tool to have on the hunt. At any time during a fight with a monster, you can just call this thing in and it'll scoop you right up and strafe around a monster. While doing this, you can let it control itself while you dig into the extra inventory and maybe transfer over items like you need some antidotes or ammo or traps. And then you can also maybe sharpen your blade on here while you're riding around if you want to, or switch weapons on the fly if the situation calls for it. And this is new, and this is very cool to have. Especially for someone like me who has never been like the best at Monster Hunter. Sometimes if I'm dealing with a creature and I'm more of a slower build character, instead of pushing through that, now I can switch to, another weapon, maybe a faster weapon I've practiced with, and I don't know, that's cool. I like the flexibility here. All the stuff on the mount, the Sacred here, is very cool and nicely implemented for the most part. This also makes the pace of fights feel a lot faster because when a monster is hurt and runs off and changes location, you get to chase it down way quicker. It can be thrilling, yeah, but like it also means you basically never skip a beat, meaning unlike the previous games, you're not as often going to be trudging around trying to track where the monster went and kind of recovering, regrouping. You know, I kind of like that part, the downtime, so the Sacred definitely changes that up. Also incredibly powerful because you can attack the monsters while riding it, and you can also jump off of this thing and slam down onto a monster for some good damage, or to mount it and do some more damage. So you have a lot of capability, more than ever really, between riding the Sacred, grappling, hooking around, taking advantage of the endemic life, climbing up on stuff, taking advantage of other things in the environment, like pulling down rocks and stuff on creatures. You can just really kick a lot of ass very easily, especially because now you're also kind of more accurate. You have focus mode, which is where you hold down the trigger and kind of aim the camera and more accurately strike certain areas of a monster that you're gunning for. It makes it slightly easier to, say, aim for the legs or avoid a more particularly armored area. It doesn't change things completely. You know, you're still kind of unwieldy and goofy, and you'll still miss swings. I mean, I certainly am here in the gameplay. I am not the best at these games, but it does help. And when you're in focus mode, you can identify open wounds you've created on the creature and target those specifically to trigger focus strikes, these special attacks and bonuses that really like rip and tear stuff off of the monsters. These hits are incredibly satisfying and have some unique ways to kind of execute them depending on the weapon you're using, which is nice. Like, you know, a great sword is like a big old running rip and tear, while smaller weapons let you stab the wound and climb up on the animal and then choose to like rip up or slam downward. It's really satisfying and adds a good layer of monster destruction and combat, along with some cool flourishes like the perfect guard and stuff like that. So I would say my biggest issue with the game so far is difficulty. I've been dog walking a lot of these monsters, just dominating. Whereas in other Monster Hunter games, for me, it's usually always a slow uphill battle. I'm slowly grinding. I'm taking a long time to beat monsters. The game's letting me just kind of go out on my own and learn and figure things out. I'm hunting multiple times to earn better gear and get an edge. Here, that progression loop still technically exists, but it feels sped up. It feels way faster. I typically get what I want pretty easily, and I claim victories pretty easily and pretty quickly. Basically, all the things I mentioned above, you know, the mount, the focus system, using the environment to your advantage, oh, and maybe even using the SOS flare to call in friends, or, you know, AI-controlled NPCs to help and draw aggro while your Palico is still also doing stuff. Really, I'm just trying to name that all, saying that the game gives you a lot of options to make quick work of monsters, and it just feels different. The prep for hunts is streamlined, just how it all goes down. You know, even like meal preparation and stuff like that is all kind of changed up. And like I said, the pacing during the battles is quicker, leading to less big, drawn-out, long hunts. I've certainly had my ass handed to me a few times, but I've been finding this adventure way less challenging than Rise or World's main quests. I expect things to ramp up in the endgame, which unfortunately I can't speak to yet as to like what kind of legs that has, but endgame is important to the dedicated Monster Hunter crowds and people that play together in groups. There's more stuff to do, the conditions change, and the variations and change-ups are something that I can't speak to because I haven't seen it all. I think the hardcore Monster Hunter crowd comes to these games and plays them endlessly for the express lack of streamlining, you know, the complications, the time dedication, the challenge. So I'm curious to see how that community takes to this one. But for me, as someone who, I'll admit, has just kind of always played through these adventures casually and had a good time, I've certainly had a good time here, but I wanted a bit more challenge. And I know some Monster Hunter fans can argue, well, the main story, the early quest thing is just enough to get you through and teach you everything. But still, just coming as someone who has played Worlds and Rise, like I found those way more compelling and challenging. But like difficulty concerns do not completely sour my experience though. The new monsters are really creative examples of outside the box thinking. You know, how these creatures react with their worlds and their environments is often tied nicely to their design. And you see some bizarre stuff. So now, even if I'm not getting one-shotted, like enemies still take a little while to learn like when to step away, when to dodge, when to block. But again, I can't express just like how cool the monster change-ups are. Gone are the basic T-Rex looking monsters. Now it's like over-the-top insane like Pokemon dragons and weird gross bug things, many of which are very memorable. The music is also still absolutely incredible, and like, you know, how it kicks in after a triumphant victory, all that stuff that you're looking for, that always still hits. Seeing these creatures exist in these worlds, sleep, patrol, heal, herd, respond when wounded, it's all as cool as it has been in previous games. And I think the team just does a really good job of building areas too, like the environments themselves, like having all these nooks and crannies and good verticality. Maybe the open world is a little too big here, you know, maybe just a little big for the sake of being big, but it still has a lot of the depths and charms from World, at least to me. The game also does a good creative job of introducing weather patterns and essentially transforming some of these environments in really fun and satisfying ways. They change their look, but can also affect resources and how monsters appear and what they do. Also, a big part of the story is dedicated to explaining like the cultures and the monsters and how they react to the world changing and stuff. It is interesting if you care to pay attention to it. And performance-wise, on console, it is offered like a performance and fidelity mode, and I played on performance. It's nice having a solid frame rate that would only stumble sometimes for me, but the bigger problem is that some of the textures and environment lighting just stylistically does not look good. Some textures look so bland, they almost look low resolution, and some areas just come off really gray and drab, where they really shouldn't. Some of it is intentional because of the world and how it progresses after certain sequences, but you know, it still just doesn't look very good. I think they've gotten a lot of mileage out of the bones here, like the framework of these Monster Hunter games, but visually it seems like it's starting to all strain a little bit. Still, the positives here are the detailed character armors, the fur, the color palettes overall, and again, having a solid frame rate. I wasn't able to test multiplayer out too much, but it seems to have the full suite of features that you would want. You don't have to get too far into the game to be able to access these, thankfully, and you can create link parties to get friends in and just play as long as you want, and you can do this in the environment. You can also send out the SOS flares I mentioned earlier to just get help from some randoms. But me personally, as a single player gamer, I just tend to hunt solo more often than not, or at least me and my cat friend here. So again, this is where we come at Monster Hunter. I've always appreciated the series, but it clicked with me with World in 2018, and now I look forward to these games and hunting monsters. Where World was challenging and detailed, Wilds is faster, quirkier, more colorful, more customizable, and a little more story-oriented. I think there's a lot to enjoy here if you're a player like me, but if you play these games for hundreds of hours, your mileage may vary. I think time will tell, and I'd like to revisit this more in the future. But for now, this is a before you buy. You know how this goes by now. I give you some pros, some cons, and some personal opinions, and now I want to hear yours. This is dropping a couple of days before release, so I do want to know what you expect, what you're looking forward to, if this is going to be your first Monster Hunter or not. Let's talk about this series. Are you like me, you play them casually, or are you someone that has been like grinding away on your 3DS and Monster Hunter games for years? Let's talk about this stuff. Anything at all, let us know in the comments. And if you like this video, and maybe, you know, hearing our first impressions and seeing the gameplay on screen here, maybe it, you know, steered your purchasing decision, clicking a like button helps us out. We appreciate that. And if you're new, consider subscribing, maybe hitting that notification bell, because we put out videos every single day. But as always, thanks for watching, and we'll see you guys next time.